She wanted to take the opportunity today to just kind of talk to you guys, inspirational discussion. I want to, when we listen to what she has to say, I want us to remember, why we're doing this job, like the impact that we have in working with children, not just in our stage. We get them after, we work with our families after investigations, and sometimes, we're really successful in our stage, but sometimes they move on, or unfortunately they move on to conservatorship. And so Letty wants to talk to us about her experiences as a child in the system and how important it is for workers to understand the impact that we have on children. So.
Yes. Thank you, Stephanie. Hi, guys. So I really wanted to talk about what our job really consists, and the fact that even though we think that our visits or our involvement with families are insignificant, I want to let you guys know that it is important. And so I wanted to start off first with a story. A few years ago, I had to work with a family, and I worked with this mom and her children for around 6 months, and I had to do a visit at the daycare, and so I had closed that case, and I had to go to the daycare to see some other children. And when I was there talking to the daycare staff, Bobby, one of the children from that previous case, ran up to me and he grabbed my legs, and he was telling all the other children, my CPS, because I'm sure mom would say, CPS lady is coming, or it's a CPS lady. So, and of course I had to tell him, yes, I'm your CPS, yes. So it kind of woke me up that time, and I said, wow, it's been a while since I had seen that family and had seen that child, and the fact that he still remembered me, kind of brought me down to wow, my involvement in that household, especially with children, is so important. And so when I was fortunate to have selective memory, so I don't remember at all my childhood. I have a few flashbacks. But I knew that CPS was involved with us. When I was around in 3rd grade, we used to, the school, for math, we had to learn our multiplication tables. So you would go, memorize your multiplication tables, come to class, had to recite them. You passed, you went home, you memorized your second one, the third. So when I got to my 6th multiplication table, I remember I memorized them, I showed up to school, and then that day was the day that we were placed out of our home. And although we were placed with family, it was very traumatic, because of course we didn't see my dad, of course we didn't see my mom. And I was fortunate that I was placed out with both of my sisters. I have an older sister and a younger sister. And so I clearly remember that I went back to school and things were different. I never learned the rest of my multiplication tables, never. And so I realized, of course, that that's traumatic, right? Because for a child that, things change. And it obviously changed for me, because I realized school was no longer important at that stage, when that happened. So I kept on going to school. We were placed in a safe environment. And in 6th grade is when I learned the cycle of abuse. I don't even know if they still teach it, but I learned the cycle of abuse, and I remember thinking, if I ever have children, that cycle of abuse is gonna stop with me. It's not gonna continue. I made this promise to myself. And so life went on. I was curious to see what had happened to us. I wanted to know a little bit of more details, like why were we placed out? What happened to us? And it was something that I always kind of carried. It was like, I always tell my parents, it's like a backpack. You're carrying this backpack of things, of feelings, of wondering. And so I started working with the department, and I was shadowing this worker, this investigator, Sylvia. And I remember, and Gracie was there when I started as well, almost 20 years ago. And I remember I was talking to Sylvia, and somehow the conversation about my childhood came up. And so a few days later, she asked me, she goes, hey, have you ever wondered about like your caseworker? And I was like, yeah, I have. I have wondered. I had tried requesting my records through the state. They couldn't find them, but I do exist in Impact, and my parents and my sisters are in Impact. We have a PID number, but it's sensitive, so I don't know what happened. They don't know what's in there. And I tried requesting records from the hospital, couldn't get them. From the school, I couldn't get them. So I had like zero memory of what was happening or what had happened to me. So Sylvia told me, oh, how would you feel about meeting your caseworker? And I was like, when? And she's like, well, like right now. And I'm like right now? Like right now? And she's like, yeah, would you want to meet him? And I was like, oh yeah, I guess. And she's like, well, come over. Takes me over, I get to meet my caseworker. We sat in my office and we talked. And I remember my caseworker asked me, what do you want to know? And I said, well, my story. I want to know what happened to me. Why did the department feel they needed to remove us? And so he started telling me, talking about my childhood. And I remember crying and crying. I was sobbing. And he was like, I don't want to upset you. And I'm like, no, you're not upsetting me. But it answered a lot of my questions. I realized that it was, that needed to happen. And so I remember him warning me, like, you're working in this job, you're gonna get flashbacks or things are gonna kind of seem familiar. You just need to be brave. And so I had the opportunity to see him throughout the years. I would see him. And one of the times, I can tell you in the 20 years that I've been here with the department, there's been 2 times where I have completely, I feel like time has stopped completely. One time I was at a training in San Antonio, and it was a forensic pathologist. And he started talking about burns. And he said, children, when they get burned, the number one excuse, when it's abuse or neglect, number one excuse the parents give is that, oh, he pulled or she pulled a pot of boiling water, a pot of boiling beans, or whatever. And that's how they get burns on their back, right? And that stopped me, and I was like, I have a burn scar on my back. And that was the excuse that my parents had given, that I had pulled a pot of beans on myself. And so then the pathologist goes, and of course I stopped and I looked, and he was listening, and he said, if you pull something on yourself, you're going to burn the front of your body and not the back. I was like, whoa. I remember getting up, walking out, and I was calling my sisters, calling my husband. I was like in shock. I just could not believe it. And then I realized, right, the importance of our trainings, how important our trainings are, and how sometimes we sit there and we're like, oh, yeah, like click next, just to get through it. But that kind of answered the question for me. Another time, Center for Miracles. The fact that we have Center for Miracles is just so important. I remember telling my caseworker that my older sister, has retina detachment on both eyes. And so when the doctors, specialists in San Antonio, sat with her at the age of 19, she was going blind, and were trying to figure out how she had detachment on both eyes. They were asking her, was there like a car accident? Was there something traumatic that happened to you? And so they did MRIs, they did all these exams and everything, and it was determined that she actually had severe blunt force trauma that she got when she was a child. And so I remember telling my caseworker about that, and he was like, and every time I see him after that, he would tell me like, that really bothers me that I was not able to detect that I was not able to pick that up. But of course, Center for Miracles did not exist back then. So I wanted to say how important our trainings and our resources that we have, right, that could help us or help our children when they become adults. It can just answer a lot of these questions. So, one valuable lesson that I learned that I'm like, wow, you know, throughout my life is that we really didn't need to memorize all those multiplication tables because I only know up to number 6, and I think I'm okay. And then I have one pop quiz. I just have one question I want to ask, and we have a prize. So whoever knows the answer, just raise your hand so we'll know who you are, and then we'll give you your prize. But does anybody remember the name of the little boy that was calling me his... Yes. So I want to resort, right? I want to be allowed to go back to my 8-year-old self, right? And introduce to you guys, my CPS caseworker. And if you can please help me welcome him. His name is David Calvetti, and he's here, and he's gonna talk. And you get a mic.
Huh?
You get a mic.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you.
Oops.
Yes.
Hi, good afternoon. As you know, I am Letty's CPS worker. I started CPS in 1982, and prior to that, I was a police officer in Austin, looking for a way to get home to Del Rio, where I'm from, and walked into a building in Austin, the state building, and they said, well, CPS job in Del Rio. So I don't know what that is, but I'm gonna try it. I wanna go home. So I applied and I got hired. And one of the first cases I got was Letty's case. The case aide asked me to see if I wanted to take on that case, and of course the supervisor, because other CPS workers didn't want to go. They were afraid to go. So she knew that I had been a police officer, so she said, well, maybe you can work with them. So I did. I got some history, very little history, and mind you, I did not have any experience with CPS. I was brand new to it. I knew how to be a police officer, but CPS worker is totally different. So the history, and I've gone over with Letty, the history I was given was there's 2 children. There's been a lot of physical abuse, neglect, there's some trauma, and there was some strong abuse where the children were being punished harshly. Some of the punishment, especially in the wintertime, was put them out in front of the yard without any clothes on and turn on the water hose and spray them with cold water. There was just enormous amount of information. At this time, CPS, we were limited in what resources we had, but we had a program called Texas Migrant Council. It was a little daycare. And so our CPS children would go to daycare. So that's, when I started the case, was already ongoing. And I'll go back a little bit and let you know that when I started, we didn't have specialized like you have now. We were called generic caseworkers. We started from the intake all the way through the adoption, if that's what it took. So it was what you would call a family-based case when I started with them, because they were already in daycare. And at that daycare, they had to teach Letty and her sister how to sit on a table, how to eat with a fork, with a spoon, because history had it that the food was thrown on the floor for them to eat. And so they did not know how to eat on a table. And so I went and met Letty and her sister. Of course, they were out playing around at daycare, but of course, they're children. They don't know what's going on. I got to go see the mother after, along with a case aide, and yes, it was an alarming case at first. Like I said, I'm new, so I go knock on the front door, and case aide says, well, you need to be careful. She has a stick by the door. So I knocked on the door, and all I heard was a loud laugh, like you hear in horror stories, like a witch laugh, and wouldn't answer the door. Wouldn't answer the door, so we went around the back to the kitchen door, and the aide told me, watch out, because there's a Folgers can next to the door, and she's got a knife there. So yeah, I walked in the door and started talking to her. It was evident to me that there was some pretty serious mental illness. Everything that was on the cupboards was on the table. And from there, we started working. I talked to her father. Father was very passive, very nice, quiet man, very passive though. Mother was the dominant one, and whatever was said was done. And at this point, we started saying, well, what are we going to do? Throughout the months, little issues kept coming up, spurring us to say, well, we got to do something with these children, staffing cases, like always, and discussing things. At the time, our attorney was a county attorney. There was no state attorney. We had a county attorney was our attorney. We ended up getting mother to be placed for an evaluation. That almost got me sued, but legal aid at the time was representing families, and so that was a challenge that I had to go through, but that's part of the job. So evaluation, and she was home, and the problem continued. Then there came a new baby, so she had a new baby, and that complicated things more, because now a person with mental illness and a newborn child, CPS system was not what it is now. The lady started getting reports again. She's running down a busy street with the baby under her arm. This became a daily thing until we finally talked to the father and said, either we discuss an option for a family placement, or they're going to go into foster care. This is your options. And he really didn't want. It was really hard for him to decide that he wanted, what he wanted to do. He was torn, loved his children, his wife, didn't know what to do. At this point, we had to take it one step forward and say, okay, we are going to remove them. And lo and behold, a grandmother, maternal grandmother, and aunt stepped up, and they said, we'll take them. And we did the history checks, and we did what we did back then, and the children were placed with maternal grandmother. And initially, that was a hard thing, because mother would come and stand across the street and stare at the house, and was told she couldn't go, but she was still there. She loved them, her children. But then we had an issue with not being able, the baby would not stop crying. And we didn't know what to do to get the baby to stop crying. So I just thought a crazy idea. I said, we'll bounce her around like when her mother used to run down the street with her. And that helped. That helped. And so over the years, we kept the case open to monitor the case. And yeah, they're clean, they've got clothes on, hair bows, and looked happy, looked up. And we ended up closing the case with a family placement. So years go by, and one day I'm looking at the local newspaper. I don't know. I think I met Letty when she was about 7. And I think at this point now, she would probably be 18, 20, I don't know. I saw her picture in the newspaper, and I said, that's the little girl that I saw. And she's working at the library. I said, wow, that's great. You feel like, wow, survived that. And I've saw her picture a couple of times in the newspaper getting awards for employee at that library. And so that was that until, I guess when she started working for CPS, and some of the staff there still knew me. And they called one day where I was working and asked, there's a girl here who says that you're a case manager, and you're a CPS worker, and she wants to talk to you. I said, okay, I don't know who it is, but I will. And so I went over there to the CPS office, and we talked for a couple of hours, I guess. Turns out, I guess the ideas she had were not necessarily what actually happened. But of course, as a child, you have your ideas or your thoughts of what happened. So over the years, we've maintained contact. We talk often. We've actually worked several cases together. She worked with Adult Protective Services briefly, and I had the pleasure of working with the child that I once went to see in a bad situation. And I guess you guys are pretty young, maybe haven't gone through that, but there's nothing like a biggest satisfaction to see somebody survive a situation like that, and yet come in and use that experience, although it was a negative experience, now she's using it to help other children. And I know initially she had a very hard time because a lot of these cases seemed to bring back some of her memories. But we've been in touch over the years, continue to be in touch. But all I want to tell you guys is that the jobs that you do are very difficult. I was a CPS worker for many, many years. And if anything, I know the cases are high, demands are there, and you've got to close this, you've got to close that. But I want to remind you, this job involves a lot of lives. They're not numbers. They're families that maybe didn't realize that there was a problem because that was a way of life, and that once you go into that family, yes, we want to do what we want to do to close this case, but please don't take your time on these cases. Try to talk to these cases, these children, these families. I know that a lot of times in CPS we feel like we're not valued, or we're seen as the bad guys, and that nobody really cares. But I guarantee you that there's a child out there that you may have worked with that is going to remember you, that maybe what you said or what you did made a difference in their lives and helped them be the people that they are today. And there's nothing but, we always say, if you can save one, you've done a great job. But the more we can save, the better. But remember that you are valued. You have a very hard job, you know. I go back to where I was a police officer. I had a badge, I had handcuffs, I had a gun, and well, back then they respected that. You go with your little bitty card and you knock on somebody's door and tell them that they're doing something wrong with their children, you're not very well liked at the point. But it just takes some work. Takes some work to get these people to understand that you're not there to accuse them. You're there because there is a concern, and that if you can in any way help, there is help. And they might not recognize it at the time, but throughout the years, there could be a child saying, that caseworker came and something switched, and I'm still here. And maybe it changed my family, or maybe it gave me a chance to survive, or it gave me a chance to be who I am today. And that could be you, all of you guys, because you do this every day, and this is a job that maybe does not seem to, at the point to you, to be appreciated, but it is very much appreciated. It is very much needed, and you are heroes, because to take on this kind of job is a challenge. It's a challenge. But when you do take it seriously, take it and own it, and do your best. Every time, do your best, because there's a child out there that could be a Letty. There's a child out there that one day is going to say, that caseworker came over here, and I don't know what he did, what he said, what happened, but because of that, I'm here, and I'm better today. And that's going to be, it's going to be you guys. It's going to be coming from you. And I can tell you that I've been lucky to have somebody say that to me, be able to meet Letty. And, you know, if you work in big cities, you might never see that person. But they won't forget. They won't forget. They won't forget, you know. And there's always that warm feeling in your heart that you did something. That even though it was hard, even though it was a challenge, it was something that you really had to bring up your guts to knock on that door or do the decision that you made or whatever you did. It was worth it. And to me, today, it's worth it. Today, it's worth it because I see her. I see her sister. I've seen her dad. I got to work with her dad again after how many years? I don't know. And I've run into people. Yeah, I was telling my other coworker, Mary, that I was down the mall some time back, and a big burly guy came up to me and said, "Are you David?" I said, "Yeah." So I thought, oh, we're gonna have problems. And he had a 18 or 20-year-old girl next to him. He says, "Do you know her?" I said, "No, sir, I don't know who she is." And he says, "Well, you saved her life." I said, "I'm not sure what you're talking about." It turns out that case I worked was cigarette burns on that child. And we had gone to court on it, and Father was able to get custody of that little girl and take away from an abusive stepfather. And this girl is now 20 years old. I don't know who she is, but I was so happy to see that what little I did helped. And again, I go back to Letty, look at her. She is excellent. I mean, her sisters, her dad, and to see this is the biggest reward you're going to get out of this job. This is the biggest reward. Yes, we got to put work into it. We got to put work into it. We got to do what they say, our due diligence, and investigate the cases best we can and do the best we can for the families. And you'll see the results. You'll see the results. I don't know if anybody has questions or comments or whatever, but no, I think I'll leave it to you young guys. I've done plenty. I've worked big cities. I've worked in Austin, CPS, and the Hotline, and worked in Del Rio, and Uvalde, Crystal City, all over the place. Worked different scenarios, like I said, from the big city to the small city, with the limited resources to where you have to make your own. And luckily today, you guys have so much more resources, so much more technology, other than my Polaroid camera that I had when I first started in 1982. That was it, but no, I'm glad that things have progressed and that I see the specialized, I like that. It's good. It concentrates on things. Of course, I'm old school and I like to see the whole thing through, but that's me. But anyway, well, I want to thank you guys for listening, and thank you very much.
Hi, David. Hi, everybody. I just wanted to jump on here and say a quick hello and a quick thank you to David. I actually wrote something, and I'll read it to you all now. I consider myself incredibly fortunate not to remember the abuse my sisters and I endured. In a way, I was saved just in time, and for that, I will always be deeply grateful to you. But what I truly want to thank you for the most is your courage. Without it, I may have never had the privilege of growing up alongside two amazing women, my sisters. If you hadn't made the incredible, difficult decision to remove us from that home, I honestly don't know where we'd be today. Because of you, I get to share my life with two women who embody bravery and unwavering support. And no, they're not threatening me or paying me to say this. They didn't make it through unscathed, though. The scars, both seen and unseen, are real. But despite everything, they've persevered. They've never given up, no matter how harsh life has been. They've been the best role models I could have asked for, and they've been incredible mothers and aunts to all of our children. Thank you for standing tall for us when we couldn't, and thank you for continuing to fight for the children in our community every single day. The work that you do, the work that you all do, truly does make a big difference, a big impact. This part's for my sisters. I expect 2 very nice and preferably expensive gifts this Christmas, being that I said all those nice things about y'all. Keep that in mind. Thank you. Bye.
Mr. David Calvetti, I would like to take this moment to express my gratitude. I thank God every day for giving you the courage, strength, and fearlessness to save 2 little girls from a mentally ill mother. Thank you for your compassion, support, and love that we desperately needed. I will never forget the warmth and care you gave to a scared 9-year-old girl. So thank you for being the voice of those who don't have anyone fighting for them. From the bottom of my heart, thank you.